And today we have the fantastic Cheyenne Glade Wilson. Man, it sounds that just rolls off the tongue.
Coolest name ever.
It is a cool name. And if you're not watching this, you're doing yourself a disservice because she has this rocking hat on. This purple velour cowboy hat that is one of the most unique ones I've ever seen. It's awesome. Oh man, Cheyenne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we are excited to have you too, especially since we met literally 2 days ago.
You know, like Fast and Furious, so it works good.
It is Fast and Furious, and you'll have to excuse me because my voice will go high pitched every once in a while. I was at a rugby match. Well, actually, I helped coach a rugby team, and the girls play. Let's see, they were 1, 2, 3, 4 games last night, so my voice is gone. So
nah, you're just an older looking 17-year-old. We know you're just going through puberty again. So.
But Cheyenne, audience, I'm sorry, we're going all over the place, but real quick, the way that we met is our mutual friend Chrysanthi, and you'll hear Chrysanthi a lot. She's just the Uber connector, and she goes, "Hey, you gotta talk to Cheyenne about getting on your podcast because she's so awesome." And when we talked yesterday, I could feel the smile over the phone.
I'm a permanent smiler. Well, not all the time, but most times. So
yeah. Well, and plus you're a 5th generation rancher, right?
Correct. Yes.
Wow. Well, you got to tell us, instead of me going all over the place, why don't you tell the audience about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I was born and raised in Montana, 5th generation Montanan, really. So I started searching my family's roots, and basically part of my family came over in the 1700s and, went to New York like most people when they came to the country, eventually went to Wisconsin and then ended up in Montana. The other part of my family was here before anyone because that is the Native American side of my family. And, ranching has just obviously been in my blood forever. After high school, though, I did leave home and went out and discovered the world. I worked in retail and business, lived in LA, Denver, Minneapolis. So I'm not just a country bumpkin, I guess you could call me, but I really enjoyed those places. In fact, I just got back from Los Angeles on a little business trip I was on. And I enjoy seeing other, areas, cultures, meeting people from all areas. And there's so many commonalities. Even if you're from a different place, you can always find something that you can visit about and be connected. And I think that's the coolest thing about it. But I really, I have a real big heart for agriculture, horses especially. My husband and I raise half draft cross horses. You might wonder what that is.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Yeah, right. So we take work horses, as they are called. So Percheron is what we started with, and we cross those on quarter horse mares. And we all know people as a whole, we're getting bigger, right? We're not like these tiny little people like our ancestors used to be, and we need bigger horses to just keep up with us. So mainly we raise them for ranch work, but also trail riding is really big for people and performance. And then I got a Gypsy Vanner stud where they are over in Ireland and Scotland. And I can talk about that later, or they can see my page for that. But we are the Lazy 6'9" Ranch, and that is what we do. And we ship colts all over the U.S. That's been really, really fun. We have a 14-year-old son. His name is Stone, and we homeschool. We started that before the pandemic, mainly because of location. It's 30 to 60 miles one way to town. So we don't, driving there is no school bus. I'm the school bus. So I decided to drive myself to my office, and that's where our son learns. And, but I could keep going on and on, but I am known as the Native Cowgirl, which obviously makes sense. I'm a cowgirl and I'm Native American. So that's that part of it as well.
Now, and what tribe? I was thinking Cheyenne, but I'm not going to make that assumption. Is it? Are you affiliated with the Cheyenne Tribe or?
No, I'm not. And that's the funny part. So I'm named Cheyenne mostly because of rodeo. My mom was a professional barrel racer. So Cheyenne Frontier Days, that, and there's a whole side of that story. But basically, I'm going to choke here. I'm actually Oglala Lakota Sioux,
Oh,
based
wow.
out of South Dakota. So yeah, yep.
Oh, wow. Okay. A barrel racer. Now, the one thing that you didn't know, I grew up on a farm. I'm allergic to horses. Still love them. And then I married my wife, and my wife's my wife's dad's aunt was one of the original barrel racers. And so when you say barrel racing, man, that stuff is heavy duty.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I actually grew up, obviously I say I was riding before I was walking, and that's actually really true. But I barrel raced up until about college. And then after that, it's not my jam. Like, I enjoy roping, and I like mounted shooting, and I like things like, I like to go, I said Fast and Furious earlier, right? And I'm not saying barrel racers don't do that, but it's just not my thing. And so I'm sure my mom's over there shaking her head, but I took to roping, and I'm a left-hander. So that's a whole nother thing when you come into roping. But yep, I'm the black sheep of the family.
So I have to ask you. It sounds like you kind of, how you say it, left home and took off. At what point did you break free from the ranch and go out into the world? And
Well, to be honest with you, I was one of those hard to manage teenagers, let's just say that. And my dad and I had differing opinions. So actually at 16, I left and moved to a different town, lived with my aunt and uncle. It was kind of short-lived, moved back, went through senior year, and then I went to college for about a year and a half, where I had a full ride rodeo scholarship. And much to my chagrin now, I'm like, what was I even thinking? I majored in partying. Like, let's just be honest. I mean, I look back, I'd like to go back and kick my own butt. Like, literally, I'm like, what was I thinking? But I'm the hard to learn person. It takes a little bit for me to learn things. I learn the hard way, let's just say. But when I do learn the lesson, it's not soon forgotten. So when I really after that, I packed up everything, sold everything I owned, had a car, and moved to LA at like 21, maybe. I don't even know if I was that old. So that was culture shock.
I can see why I like you so much. I think I can see why Carrie likes you so much. I think we all were of that same mode.
Yeah.
but the reason I asked that is, as we were talking before the podcast, is we have kind of similar upbringings a little bit. I grew up on a ranch and a farm, and with horses. Horses run deep in my blood. I still say some of my best friends in my life are horses that I've had in the past. That roping on Thursday night and all that type of stuff. But I tell you what, when I graduated from high school, I ran and I didn't look back for a while, because sometimes you don't appreciate it, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, wait a minute, got a really good thing going on back there, and so and I've kind of returned to kind of work in my little hometown, so it's pretty exciting. So, but I think it's good when people can like, you went to LA. That is a drastic, like you said, culture shock, but it's obvious that it's really rounded you out to the person you are now. Like, what was that experience like, going from a little ranch or not say little, but a ranch in the middle of nowhere to LA?
So it was, obviously, this was before smartphones, computers. I remember having, what was that thing called, the Thomas Guide, that huge map.
Yeah.
And
it was a book. Yeah,
oh my
God, it was straight up a book.
Like, okay, I graduated in 1991, so let's get real here. Like, this was not yesterday. So I packed up everything I owned, literally, and this is no joke. I have two funny stories. I drove down there in, I don't even know what car, like a Monte Carlo. Like, I don't remember what it was. Those were the cool cars back then. But the passenger door did not lock. So this is no kidding. I was at stoplights, and those stoplights take forever. And you're like, my God, someone's going to come up and open this door. So I have a suitcase handle thing tied to it, and I'm holding on to it as I'm like, really, I'm going to keep somebody out of this car? Like, if they really want in here? No. The other fun story is when I went, I was like, okay, this rent is ridiculous because I used to rent a house and it was way less than an apartment, right? And I was right in Hollywood. So Holly weird, as I call it, because there were people walking around with aluminum hats. I mean, I was literally like, this is like stuff of fiction, right? And this is real. But I learned a lot while I was there. And when I went to go get a job, I went to an employment agency, which I didn't even know really what that was. They literally found out I was from Montana and I was hired that day.
Oh,
Like must be, they said something about the work ethic. I mean,
yeah.
hey, yay for Montana. So that's what it was. I worked in a law firm down there. In trademarks and patents. And then when I would live there less than a year, but I wanted to go and see, right? Like people can tell you the grass is always greener, but you don't know till you actually get over there. And you're right. I could look back and go, wow, I had it pretty good back there,
Yeah.
but I'm still trucking on and I'm going to experience life. And then I eventually got into retail. And that's really where I like to think I shine because I enjoy people. I love visiting. I enjoy the challenge of sales. So that's just kind of how it all started out. And I just kind of trickled around for about 10 years before I actually moved home per se. So
I
yeah.
love it. Well, the Native Cowgirl, tell me how that came about. You explain a little bit about that. I'm looking at your website. It's you can, again, yeah, I'll say it on, but you can't help but smile. It's obvious you have a passion for everything you do, but explain the impetus for that.
So many people know who the pioneer woman is. And before the Native Cowgirl came about, I actually had a cap business, like ball caps, and I used Swarovski crystals. So they were a high-end cap. I custom handmade all these designs and stuff. And I actually made ball caps for her. She was one of many clients I had. And this was a business that I started from scratch in my living room, literally. And then I became a mom. And so then that business grew, but it kind of grew to the point where I couldn't go any further in my rural area. So I sold that business. And before that, I was sitting there going, what am I going to do with my time? And I enjoy writing. I became a published writer when I was 11 years old. One of my poems got chosen to, be in a book. And so I really took off. I started writing for our local newspaper. I've written for many magazines, just things like that. And so I thought, hey, this blogging thing is really kind of cool. And I enjoy hopping on different blogs and reading, and I love to cook. And I thought, hey, I can put out some of these old like country recipes that have been handed down for years. And so that's what I did. And I was thinking of a name, and I wasn't trying to copy the Pioneer Woman, but I was like, well, who am I in a few short, simple words? And that's how the Native Cowgirl came about. And since I like to move around and stuff, I knew I couldn't name myself like Montana or South Dakota or wherever I've lived, because it would just be like, that would be a problem. So
I think you got the perfect name.
It so suits you. It so suits you. Well, and reading a little bit about yourself in some of our brief discussions, you really have a strong commitment to helping people succeed, and especially helping rural entrepreneurs. You said, "Hey, man, I was in the middle of nowhere and we're still doing pretty daggum good." And yes. I was wondering, how do you help rural entrepreneurs, and how did you get your start into this? So when I think of a ranch, I think of the hard work. I think about the long days and the almost like you're isolated, man. Yeah, you're isolated. Sure. Yeah, here you are, you're influencing people on a ranch in the middle of what many people would consider nowhere. You're inspiring individuals. I mean, what are the things that you are doing that is making such a great impact here?
Well, the first thing I want to, recognize is that when you grow up in agriculture, and you guys probably can identify with this, it is a very selfless position. Mm-hmm. Because you don't get up first thing in the morning and think about me. I mean, yes, you want to take care of yourself and do those things, but you are thinking about your animals. How are they? Like the first thing I did this morning when I woke up is I looked out, because we raise foals. And so I looked out to see, and there's a lot of them, but just the overall consensus, right? So being selfless, I wanted to always help people. That's always the person I've been. I didn't always know how to do that.
Mhm.
So when I started, obviously going all over the country, learning through the school of hard knocks, because that's just how it is for me. I made a lot of mistakes in my young years. I actually went through a bankruptcy. I went through a divorce, which those two were tied together. There were some things that were really hard, and that was not looked highly upon by my family. They just kind of, not the divorce so much. I think they were happy about the divorce, but they were not happy about the bankruptcy. And so I had to pick myself up by my bootstraps, for lack of a better term, and go forward. And so I knew that from a very young age, like I had my first job when I was like 11. Like I earned my own money, and I knew truly that that was my money. I didn't, I wasn't given this, I earned this. And so I learned how to work hard for the things that I wanted. Now, the bankruptcy set me back a bit, but I also realized that I was given a clean slate, and that I didn't want that lesson to be, something that I didn't, learn from. And so I started learning about finance, which is something I wasn't taught as a young person, and no fault to my parents. It's just ranchers live on like borrowed money every year.
Yeah.
So we take out a loan and you've got all this money, and somehow it just works, right? Like my parents didn't sit me down and go, okay, this is how you budget. This is how. That just never happened. I had my first checking account when I was 9. And our son, he can't even have a checking account till now he turned 14. So it's funny how things have changed. So number one, finances, but then number two was business. So I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, I sold things when I was a kid. I was making reins, like, so for horses, the rein off the bit. I braided those. I sold those.
Wow.
So having that entrepreneurial spirit, it doesn't matter where you live. There's many people, as you see through social media now, they create the coolest things. And I don't care if you live in India or Antarctica or Montana, you have a skill, and now the world is able to see what that is. And so what I do is I do different things. I do coaching. So I can be a sounding board. A lot of times people have an idea and they don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
I'm going to be 50 next year. So I work with a lot of women who are kind of in that 40s area. And they're like, their kids, kind of the empty nest thing, like their kids are older and now they find themselves with this time. Maybe they have a job and maybe they decided to stay home and, raise their children, whatever it is. There's so many cool things. And especially since the pandemic, like homesteading, and I mean, women who are making jams and jellies or soaps in their kitchen. And
Yeah.
now they have this audience that wants to buy those things. And so how do they build a website? How do they get out on social media? And so what I've done is, what I've learned from doing it myself is lots of things over these years. I've built several businesses from the ground up. The other thing is I just enjoy meeting people and truly listening to them and what they want, not putting my agenda on anybody else. And so building relationships too is huge, and obviously networking. And then with that, I will say that almost 8 years ago, I got connected with a network marketing business, and network marketing gets a really bad rap sometimes from people. But I do believe that that is changing, and it will change with the current state of things in our world right now. But I became a 7-figure earner with that company from the middle of nowhere. And the reason that that happened was being excited, number one, about what you're offering, wanting to help people, because that's what network marketing is. You have a product, you're not selling, you're trying to help somebody. And then you're also helping others that join your team. And so I have nothing but great things to say about that. I still do that business, but I have my full plate. I'm a real estate agent. I homeschool our son. I'm raising horses. But the cool thing is, you really can have it all. You just have to time manage, and you have to figure out what your priorities are and how to do it. And that's what I enjoy visiting with people about and helping them figure out in their busy lives as well.
Well, that's one of the. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
It is a big deal right now, because if you look at it, we have the great resignation going on, and I have been speaking with friends all over the place, all over the nation, and they're wondering, they're stuck, or they've lost their job and their identity was attached to that job, and all these different things that they weren't able to trailblaze themselves. It's funny because oftentimes when I was in organizations, it's like, I'll bag it. Who cares? I kind of had that tell. I think Gary, that's I think why Gary and I are such good buddies. Is like, no, we're not defined by this place. And what's so refreshing to hear from you is that you did trailblaze something that was catered to you. And we're seeing a lot of that nowadays. A ton of it, whether it be in healthcare, whether it be in finance or wherever it might be. And so just to hear that people are taking that chance and oh my goodness, it goes back to that identity reconstruction we had in another interview, right? It's so relevant now. And man, and Gary, I'm sorry, I know I went over on one of your questions, so maybe
Oh no, it's just more of an observation. Is I think the cool thing about the world that we live in now is that we can have our cake and eat it too. You know, and if one of the things I appreciate about you, Cheyenne, is I was kind of flipping through your TikToks and that type of thing. Is I see rural living on a ranch, working with horses, it's literally and figuratively grounding. It's incredibly grounding. And we live in a world where most people want loudness, excitement, and in your face. Whereas you lean into the calm, you lean into the quiet, and it's okay. And I think it's so awesome. Like you said, we did some volunteer work ages ago in Nicaragua, and the people that I met there, they can take their crafts and they can now have a way to live where they live in the wonderful communities that they have, and yet, you know, be worldwide, be global. You know what I mean? It's so exciting. But anyway, I really appreciate what you're doing in this, excuse me, in the sense of you bring who you are, where you live, that calmness and that grounding into your entrepreneurship as well. I mean, it kind of permeates everything. Have you thought about that? Is this intentional, or is this just kind of who you are, or how does that happen?
Well, it's not intentional at all. It genuinely is who I am, but it's also part of what I want to bring out into the world. And you are absolutely right about grounding. I was going to say therapeutic, because I have trauma in my past, from childhood and things like that. And I don't talk about it a lot. I've been through therapy, believe me, some things, you know, and even through, you know, my life experiences and things like that, it hasn't all been sunshine and roses. I tend to smile and, you know, go to the positive, because it's not even half glass, you know, glass is half full, glass is half empty. I'm just glad to have a glass at all, right? Like that's the mentality you want to have.
Awesome.
And it's being grateful just to be alive. And, you know, you can look around yourself and you can say, oh my gosh, it's raining, how horrible. Or you can say, oh my gosh, how it's raining, how wonderful. Like it's all mindset. And so that's really where it comes to for me. And I have to give huge props to my husband. When I met him, I was, you know, bankrupt. I was at ground zero. And he really, I always say was born 150 years too late. Imagine John Wayne and Clint Eastwood had a baby. That is my husband. And no joking. He's this big, strong cowboy with the softest, kindest heart, but yet very firm. And he is very firm in his beliefs that we make our own way. Like we aren't gifted things. We don't deserve anything. Like this is where it's at. And I see a lot of things changing as time goes along, you know, and Generation Z and all this stuff, you know, and I think that we can have an influence on that, though. We don't just have to sit there and roll our eyes at the younger generation. We can help them learn how to have that gratitude, learn how to have a good mindset, you know, and learn that, you know, you have to live in your body your whole life. And hopefully that's a long time. But thinking about the things that we do on a daily basis for that, and your mind is number one. It's connected to your heart, it's connected to everything. And so with that being said, yes. And I actually, on our place here in Montana, I hope to create like not a guest ranch situation, but a sanctuary for people to come interact with horses, interact with nature, kind of a glamping experience, if you will, but then they can put on additional things. If they want to go pet a baby foal, they can. Like there's things like that. And people need that. They need that place to escape, that sanctuary, as I said. And that is exactly what it is for me. And I do hope to do that for people, but it's a process, right? Like a financial process of getting there.
Sure.
I'm smiling so big. I stared at Gary, and he's probably looking in our screens where he's wondering what I'm looking at. But I was like, Gary, we were interviewing Sean Covey, and Sean Covey, they experienced loss in their family, but it came about that horses were one of the best ways to help people come to grips with emotional health. And it was amazing to hear that. And they've started this thing called Bridled Up Hope that is going throughout the nation, and then they're looking at it all over the place. But to your point, I mean, what a way to grasp the reins of emotional health, right? Grasp the reins of emotional health, because it's funny because almost in every podcast we've had, with the exception of just a few, emotional health has come up, and it is one of those things. And it was funny. I was talking to someone in a corporation yesterday, and they go, "Yeah, this emotional health stuff, they're just making it a program. They're not really dealing with it." And no knock on corporations that are actually really addressing it, but what you're talking about is hitting it head on. And to realize it's not a convenient thing. It's something that you have to come to terms with. And so, wow.
Yeah. Well, and that's so true. So during the pandemic, something that really came to the forefront was rural mental health.
Mhm.
And, speaking of John Wayne earlier, you look at those movies and they're this big, tough, brooding fellow that probably didn't say boo. They still struggle. They still and I'm telling you, when you have a 6-figure ranch payment every year to meet, when you have little baby horses dying because something happened, it is, I have shed more tears, especially in this transition, excuse me, as we are moving up here. I spent a lot of time alone. And number one, that was hard. Number two, it was something that I learned how strong I am and what I'm capable of. We do not say can't in our family, because you can figure out a way. So can't is something our son has grown up learning. We just don't say that.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that we have resources, right? And we have things that our pioneering forefathers and mothers didn't have. I have a skid steer I can go use. I have things, but the emotional side of it is the number one thing. And finding people that you can, lock arms with, maybe a shoulder to cry on, maybe you run outside and scream cuss words. I don't know what it is. But you have to be able to do something. And it doesn't matter if you're male or female. It's not a weakness. In fact, your mental health is everything, and it has to be addressed. And through horses, yes. You come out here, and I don't care if you take, the grounding technique where you take your shoes off and you walk in the grass and you do all that. That's very valid for even someone who does live in the city. Go to the park. Like, there's ways you can do that on a daily, but gosh, the horses, they've always been in my heart and soul. And yes, if you look through my Instagram, through my blog, through all of it, it's always been about horses, and it will always be about horses. I would love to get some little minis and take them to the nursing home in town near here. I have this whole plan, and much to my husband's horror, because if people see these big horses and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm scared of those." I'm like, "No, fear the little one over there. Fear that."
Yeah.
They have some attitude. They bite hard.
One thing I think is totally interesting is I think it's so awesome how, so you're talking about on one side of the coin where over isolation can be so dangerous. And I'm in healthcare, and I saw Wyoming, Montana, there's a huge problem with people having mental health issues, but also access to help with mental issues. But anyway, that's a whole separate topic. But anyway, on the other side of the coin, you've got people that need that isolation, that need that retreat. And so how cool is it that, with what you're trying to set up, is we're such a communal species. I guess that's the easiest way for me to say it. And the power of bringing people together from different domains, whatever you want to call that, the power that's there. So like with your, what you're trying to set up with, with your glamping or getting people back to the country and get their feet in the dirt, that also helps you. It's almost like what, you put out there, kind of this healing thing. People are looking for it, but yet it also heals you.
Absolutely. And the fun thing about this is that my husband's grandparents, who owned this place prior to us, this is where my husband grew up. That's the cool thing, is like, we've come full circle, right? We went out, we saw, we explored, we came home. But the cool thing is they had a guest ranch here, and they did like day rides, so people could come get on their horses and they'd take them out. They also had like a outfitting business for hunting. So all of that went away when the grandparents got older, but my husband grew up doing that. And he told me, I will never do that again. And I was like, okay, for one, you are right about isolation. So I'm an extroverted introvert. Like, I love my quiet time, but I have to be around people. My husband too, he would never even think to admit it, but he's like, I don't need people. And then he's over there and I'm dragging him away as I work. Wait, you're visiting. Let's go. But it's so fun. People need people, and they really need people who I feel are unbiased. Like, I don't know who they are in their life in New York City or maybe in Chicago or whatever. I don't know what kind of house they live in, what kind of car they drive. It doesn't matter. At the end of it, we strip all those things away. We are a being, and we need to feel connected, whether it's to the earth, to other people, both, like we and each other too, like families. I see families who are so disconnected, their smartphones, and all the things. But you know what? Those things are never going to go away. It's really about prioritizing what's important to you and taking the time to love and respect those around you, family, friends, whatever it is. And so I do just about everything. When I talk to people, it's kind of like we have our own therapy session. And the fun thing is they're helping me just as much as I may be helping them, So yes, we do hope to get that back up and running. And we're going to kind of use the name that our grandparents had used before, but like kind of renew it a little bit. And so we have all kinds of plans. I just have to budget it and figure out how that's all going to happen, and timing, but we're excited. So
you'll get it done.
I'm going to go on a different tangent here, because there was a woman that we interviewed from Australia, and she was talking about farms and how to save farms, and she talked about how her father contracted something, and she was on this mission to really help people through agriculture. And when I was reading part of a little bit about you, you're going, empowering women through agriculture. I want to understand a little bit more about that, because when you look at agriculture as a whole, to your point, and as all three of us have experienced, that's a hard thing. But at the same time, when you look back at something that you planted, or when you see it grow and in mass, right? It's just, holy moly, man. Yeah, I don't remember that pain anymore, man. Anyway, can you tell us a little bit about how you do that? How do you empower women through agriculture?
Sure. Well, I think it probably goes back to my Native American side. So if you know anything about the culture of Native Americans, the women, the matriarchal society of the tribes was really how the tribe survived. Like, they always think, the warriors went out and got the food and they ruled the roost. That's not how it was. Women really were the rulers of the tribes. Yes, we need hunters and all that stuff, right? But the same thing is in our world. Like, women are nurturers, and we are the reason that, society keeps growing as a whole, because of giving birth, right? Like, we have all these things, and not to discount men. We are all integrated and we need each other. I mean, one doesn't happen without the other, right? But agriculture, for one, is women, I think, especially, and I'm at that age now where, like I said, I'm going to be 50 next year. I'm not trying to keep up with the Janeses, as I call it, not the Joneses. I'm not trying to keep up with the Kardashians or whomever that might be. And I respect them in their own right, because they've done things, I'm not going to sit here and discount anyone for what they've done. What I will say is I'm very happy with where I'm at in my life. It took me a long time to get here. In the path of an entrepreneur or even life is not starting here and climbing Mount Everest and getting here. It's like, you know, like you're like taking all these circles and then you get to the top and you're like, I made it. And then you're like, down the other side, right? That is how I got to use sound effects for our listeners. But anyway, I was like, this is not fun. I do not like the fact that I'm sliding down again, but that is life. Even as women, like in our 20s, we're like, ooh, ooh, look at me. And then 30 comes, oh my God, what are these bags under my eyes? And then you're pregnant and you're like, look like a whale. And then you get done having the baby and you're tired. You look like you've been through hell, excuse my expression, but you know, and then you get to 40 and you're like, ah. And then 50 comes along, you're like, what in the, you know, so it's like, that is the path. And men too, men have it as well. They're like all buff and then they're not, you know, they're, but that's what happens. Like we all have to work hard. And so the whole agriculture piece of it is I love to use animals as an example. And whether it be cows or horses, mares in specific, mares rule the roost. You put a mare in with a bunch of geldings, she's going to be top notch and she's going to say and do whatever. They're going to listen, right? They're like, yes, ma'am. That's just, it's about knowing who you are. And agriculture, like gardening, working with horses, even just getting outside and walking around and putting your feet in the grass or just smelling, you know, just looking around us and appreciating nature for one. It slows down everything and like all the to-do lists and the, oh God, I got to run 5 miles because I got to keep up with the Janeses, you know, okay, great. If that's for your mental health, wonderful. But if you are at 50 and you're comparing yourself to a 20 something that has been filtered and sucked in and whatever the magazines and the TV shows do, that's unrealistic. So it's really about who you are, where you're at, and loving that. That is what it is. It, you know, whether, you know, that's what you envision for yourself. I have mothers and daughters that are doing this together. And I love the fact that there's a 50-year-old woman with a 20-year-old daughter or 25-year-old. And she's like, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're all hot and all that right now, but then not, you know, you're going to have to learn mentally how to navigate this, but also how to rock it. Like, don't feel bad about this. Feel good for the journey. And when I worked for Estee Lauder, I read her book, and that woman was an amazing force to be reckoned with back in the day. And she said something about like, don't be sad about getting wrinkles. Be glad because there's someone or many that never got that opportunity. And so it's changing your mindset about those things. And then, you know, finding that, group of people, like I said earlier, that you can lock arms with and kind of your tribe. And that goes along with the Native Cowgirl, right? But many people say it, but it's true. I mean, women uplift each other. A lot of people have the misconception that women tear each other down. And we don't do that here. We're here to celebrate and to show opportunity and to, you know, bounce ideas off of it and then learn to grow. And so that's really what I feel my role as a middle-aged, oh my God, woman is like, I don't care about middle-aged. I'm like ... right? Like there's the starting point and there's the ending point and it's all dots in between. And what you do each day matters to you and to everyone else. So that's kind of, I mean, women in agriculture, it's just bringing people out here. And that's my goal, is just to show them how wonderful it is. And it doesn't matter where they live, they can still find that little piece of heaven and have that sanctuary too. So
that is amazing. This is so fun because there's so much, well, first of all, not only energy, but so many grand tidbits of wisdom that are so simple to grasp hold of. And I appreciate the way that you present it, because it's so not only inspiring, but it's, lack of a better word, fun. I've had a lot of fun.
Two words. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's what this is it's simple. People try to make it too hard. Yeah. Agriculture, it's really simple. You put a seed in the ground, you water it, hopefully it grows. That's where we're at, right?
But so 2 G words come to mind when I think of you, Cheyenne. Gratitude and genuine. Or just go hand in hand. I mean, that's kind of like your superpower, it seems like. Is you just exude gratitude, and that's such a powerful thing.
Yeah.
If people can wrap their head, and like you said, you touched on it, life hasn't been all roses and sugar plums or whatever you want to say for you over time, but yet the power of gratitude, and also, like you said, you're genuine. You're who you are. You lean into it and say, "This is a great time to be alive. It's a great time to be 50 years old." Yeah. We're just on the other side of that equation, so we know that too. I was telling my kids a couple of days ago, kind of that same thing. They're like, "Dad, man, you're old," and I'm like, "You know what? I'm loving it. Like, this is a good time to be my age." You know.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Wait, and you're going to start getting your AARP invitations real quick.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, I just looked at it. I remember showing my wife. For real?
Well, there are.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm still in denial. So my kids are probably more mature than I am. I know Maurice is kind of the same way, but I have a feeling, Cheyenne, you're very similar.
Age is just a number, baby.
That's right.
Well, Cheyenne, I have to say thank you for sharing the story and for just bringing a smile to our face at the beginning of the day here. It's just fantastic.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. Truly gratitude on this end. Thank you both very much. I've enjoyed it immensely. And I might just my cheeks are gonna be hurting tonight because I'll be smiling all day. Thank you.
Well, when you get your operation up and going, jump back on with us and let's get the word out.
Sounds good. I appreciate that. Will do.
All right.